This Christmas, my daughter-in-law looked me straight in the eye and said, "We're spending Christmas at my mom's this year. You can stay home." I didn't argue. I simply smiled, wished them well, and later booked a flight. When I posted my photos online, my phone nearly burst with messages. Everyone kept asking the same thing. Who was the man sitting next to you? Before I tell you how it all happened, take a moment to subscribe and comment below where you're watching from. This story might change how you think about family, love, and second chances. My name is Linda Dawson. I'm 67 years old, and I live alone in a small home in Colorado, the same house my husband and I bought 40 years ago. The walls are filled with old photographs, and the scent of cinnamon always lingers, especially during the holidays. Christmas has always been my favorite season, mostly because it used to bring my family together. My husband, Paul, passed away 8 years ago. Since then, my son Mark and his wife Hannah have been my only close family. Every Christmas, I visited their home, brought my pecan pie, wrapped gifts for my grandkids, and helped Hannah with the decorations. It wasn't perfect, but it gave me a sense of belonging. This year, though, something felt different. Hannah had been distant for months, and even Mark called less often. Still, I reminded myself, families get busy, people grow, and I didn't want to be the kind of mother who made them feel guilty for living their lives. A week before Christmas, I called to ask what time I should come over. Hannah answered, her tone polite but cold. "Linda, we're spending Christmas at my mom's this year," she said. "It'll be easier for everyone. You can stay home and relax." I felt my heart sink, but I forced a smile, even though she couldn't see it. "Oh, I see. That sounds lovely," I said softly. She thanked me quickly and hung up before I could say more. After the call, I sat at my kitchen table in silence. The only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. I looked around at the decorations I had already put up, garlands on the fireplace, stockings neatly hung, and the tree twinkling in the corner. For years I had done it all for them so that when they arrived it would feel like home. Now it just felt empty. That night, I made myself a cup of tea and opened old photo albums. There was Mark as a little boy opening presents, Paul carving the turkey, and Hannah smiling the year she first joined the family. My eyes filled with tears, but I kept turning the pages, whispering, "It's just one Christmas. It's fine." But deep down it wasn't. It wasn't about being alone. It was about being forgotten. The next morning, Mark called briefly. His voice carried guilt. "Mom, I hope you're not upset. You know how Hannah's mom loves to host. It's just 1 year, okay?" I said what mothers always say. "Of course, sweetheart. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." After hanging up, I gazed out the window. Snow fell softly, covering everything in white. Neighborhood kids were building snowmen, their laughter echoing through the cold air. For a moment, I felt like an outsider in my own life. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone except me. That evening, I sat by the fireplace, my cat curled in my lap. The tree lights cast a warm glow across the room. I could almost hear Paul's voice teasing gently. "You always take care of everyone else, Linda. When will you do something for yourself?" It was then that a quiet thought formed in my mind. Maybe this year didn't have to be about waiting for an invitation that wasn't coming. Maybe I could give myself a different kind of Christmas, one filled with peace instead of pity. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Maybe it's time to start living for me." What I didn't know then was that this small decision would lead to something extraordinary, a journey that would change not only my Christmas, but the rest of my life. The days leading up to Christmas were quiet, almost unnervingly so. The house that once echoed with laughter and the sound of wrapping paper now felt still. I tried to stay busy, baking cookies no one would eat, wrapping small gifts for the neighbors' children, just to feel useful. But every time I passed the family photo on the mantel, me, Paul, and little Mark smiling under a Christmas tree decades ago, a dull ache filled my chest. I had always believed that love and family were inseparable, that no matter how time passed, those we raised would never forget us. But standing in my empty kitchen, I realized something painful. Love doesn't vanish, but sometimes people stop seeing it. That evening, I turned on the TV, flipping through Christmas movies filled with reunions, surprises, and warm hugs by glowing fireplaces. I wanted to turn it off, but I couldn't. It was like the screen was showing me everything I was missing. I whispered to myself, "You're not part of anyone's story this year." And that hurt more than anything. The next day, Mark called again. "Mom, just wanted to check in. You okay?" His voice was gentle but rushed, as if he was squeezing me between errands. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I've got my tree up and a good book to read," I replied with a smile. "That's good, Mom. We'll stop by after the holidays, I promise." I heard Hannah's voice in the background telling him to hurry up, and then the call ended. I stood there holding my phone long after the line went silent. My heart felt both full and hollow, full of love for my son, yet empty because he no longer knew how to show it the way he used to. Later that night, while putting away a box of decorations I hadn't bothered to use, I noticed an old suitcase on the top shelf. It was the one Paul and I had taken on our only trip to Europe. I ran my hand along the worn handle, remembering Paris, Rome, Vienna, and Paul saying, "See, Linda, the world isn't as big as we think. You just have to be brave enough to step into it." That memory stayed with me all night. I went to bed with a new idea, one that felt both frightening and exciting. The next morning I brewed coffee and opened my laptop. I typed Christmas trips for seniors into the search bar just out of curiosity. Photos of bright markets, cosy towns and smiling travellers filled my screen. One trip caught my attention. A Christmas tour of Europe, Germany, Austria and Switzerland, departing in 3 days. My heart raced. It sounded crazy, completely out of character, but something inside whispered, "Do it." For the first time in years, I felt alive. I filled out the form, entered my card details and clicked Book Now. My hands trembled, but I couldn't stop smiling. I wasn't waiting for permission to be happy anymore. I was giving it to myself. The next few days passed in a blur of nerves and excitement. I pulled out my suitcase, packed scarves, sweaters, Paul's old travel journal, and the gold locket he'd given me on our 20th anniversary. I told no one, not even Mark, not out of spite, but freedom. For once, I was doing something entirely for myself. When the day came, I stood at the airport surrounded by families hugging, couples holding hands, children laughing as they waited to board. I felt a small pang in my heart, but it didn't last. This was my new beginning. On the plane, I found my seat next to a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes. He smiled warmly. "Headed home or heading out?" he asked. "Heading somewhere new," I replied with a grin. He chuckled. "Good answer." His name was David Monroe. And as the plane lifted off, we began talking about where we were from, the places we'd seen, and the people we'd loved. By the time we landed, it felt like I'd known him for years. He was a retired professor travelling alone after losing his wife a few years ago. I told him about Paul, my son, and the emptiness that had led me here. He listened, not with pity, but with genuine understanding. That night, as we arrived in Munich and snow began to fall, I realised something powerful. My daughter-in-law told me to stay home because she thought I had nowhere else to go. But standing there under the winter sky, I finally understood I had the whole world waiting for me, and I had just begun to find it. The first few days of the trip felt like stepping into another world. Everywhere I turned, there were glowing lights, cheerful carols, and faces full of joy. I wasn't used to being surrounded by so much warmth, but slowly it started to seep into me. Our tour group was small, around 20 people, most of them retirees like me who wanted to spend Christmas somewhere different. We explored cosy Christmas markets in Munich, admired old cathedrals in Salzburg, and shared stories over mugs of mulled wine. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like the forgotten one left behind at home. I felt part of something again. David, the man who'd sat beside me on the flight, seemed to drift naturally into my orbit wherever we went. He was tall, calm, and carried himself with quiet confidence that made everyone feel comfortable. His humour was subtle but steady, and his smile always reached his eyes. We talked about everything: our children, the spouses we'd lost, our regrets, and the small joys we still cherished. David told me how he and his late wife used to travel every winter and how the silence of his home had become almost unbearable since she passed. When I said I understood that kind of quiet all too well, he didn't respond with sympathy but with understanding. That simple connection meant more than any words could. On the third evening, our group had dinner at a small restaurant overlooking Vienna's snow-covered streets. Twinkling lights hung from every window, and the faint sound of a violin drifted from somewhere nearby. As the waiter poured our wine, David lifted his glass toward me and said, "To second chances." I smiled and raised mine, "and to finding joy where you least expect it." After dinner, we strolled back to the hotel slowly, taking our time beneath the falling snow. The air was cold, but alive with something beautiful. For a while, I forgot everything that had hurt. The loneliness of my quiet house, Hannah's distant voice, the ache of being left behind. For the first time in years, I was truly living instead of waiting. The next morning, I woke early and decided to take a walk before breakfast. The streets were peaceful, the air filled with the scent of roasted chestnuts and fresh coffee. I sat on a bench near a frozen fountain, watching the city come alive. Then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Mark. "Hey, Mom, just wanted to check in. Hope you're doing okay. We're having dinner at Hannah's mom's tonight. The kids miss you." I read the message twice. My first instinct was to type back, "I'm fine, just home resting." But then I looked up at the snow-covered rooftops and the people laughing nearby, and I thought, no, not this time. Instead, I took a photo of the square glowing in the morning light and replied, "Merry Christmas from Vienna. Having a wonderful time." Within seconds, the typing bubbles appeared, then stopped. I smiled, slipped my phone back into my pocket, and breathed in the crisp air. Later that day, our group visited another Christmas market in Salzburg. The stalls were filled with handmade ornaments, candles, and pastries dusted with sugar. I bought a small wooden angel to hang on my tree next year, a reminder of the Christmas that changed everything. David found me standing near a booth and handed me 2 steaming mugs of cocoa. "You look like you needed this," he said with a grin. We sat together on a nearby bench, sipping cocoa and talking for hours while snow fell gently around us. When evening came, the group gathered in the town square to watch a Christmas choir perform. Candles flickered in every hand as the crowd sang Silent Night. David stood beside me, his hand brushing lightly against mine. For a brief moment, something stirred in my heart, something I hadn't felt since Paul passed away. It wasn't just affection. It was a quiet peace that comes from being truly seen. Later that night, back at the hotel, I looked through the photos on my phone. One of them showed David and me laughing beside a Christmas tree as another traveller tried to take our picture. Without overthinking it, I posted it online with the caption, "Sometimes the best company is found when you stop waiting for an invitation." I didn't expect much, but within minutes, my phone lit up with notifications, likes, comments, messages all flooding in. Friends and former co-workers wrote, "You look so happy, Linda, and good for you. You deserve this." Then came the messages from my family. Mark texted, "Mom, where are you? Who's that man?" Followed quickly by, "Please call me." Even Hannah messaged, "Wow, I didn't know you were travelling. You look different. Is that someone special?" I stared at their messages for a while, then turned off my phone and looked out the hotel window at the glowing city below. For years, I had waited for my family to make me feel like I mattered. But now I understood. I didn't need anyone's permission to live my life. I had given so much of myself to everyone else. Now it was time to reclaim something for me, my happiness. That night, I fell asleep with a calm heart. I didn't know what would happen when I went home, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the same woman who had been told to stay home. I had rediscovered something far stronger than pity or apology. I had found my courage again. Christmas morning in Salzburg began with the sound of church bells ringing through the crisp air. Sunlight spilled into my hotel room, glimmering against the snow outside. I sat on the edge of the bed holding a small cup of coffee, feeling a quiet peace I hadn't experienced in years. My heart felt light, free, and open. My phone rested on the nightstand, buzzing with over 50 notifications, messages, calls, and comments on the photo I had posted the night before. That single picture with David under the Christmas lights had sparked something unexpected. Friends from home sent kind words, telling me how happy I looked. Old neighbours I hadn't spoken to in years left hearts and warm wishes. But it was the messages from Mark that caught my attention most. "Mom, are you really in Europe? Who is that man? You didn't tell us you were going anywhere. We're worried about you. Please call me." I sighed softly and put the phone down. I didn't feel anger, only quiet understanding. Sometimes people only recognize your worth when they see someone else valuing it. That morning, our tour group gathered in the hotel lobby to exchange small gifts. Everyone had chosen something from the markets: a scarf, a trinket, a box of chocolates. David handed me a small wrapped package. "Merry Christmas, Linda," he said with a smile. I opened it carefully. Inside was a delicate snow globe, a tiny wooden house with 2 figures beside a Christmas tree. I looked up at him, touched. "It reminded me of you," he said, "someone who carries warmth wherever she goes." For a moment I couldn't speak. Tears filled my eyes. "It's perfect, David. Thank you." We spent the rest of the day wandering the city, visiting the Grand Cathedral, and strolling along the river. The streets were alive with families, couples, and travellers, each celebrating in their own way. But I didn't feel alone. As the sun began to set, David and I stopped at a quiet cafe for dinner. Candles flickered on every table, soft carols playing in the background. We laughed over our inability to pronounce half the dishes on the menu. At one point, David leaned back, looking at me thoughtfully. "Can I tell you something, Linda?" he asked. "Of course," I said. He hesitated for a moment. "I knew who you were before this trip." I blinked in surprise. "You did?" He nodded. "Your husband, Paul, was close friends with my brother, Stephen, back in his Navy days. I met you once decades ago at Stephen's house, just briefly. Paul spoke about you often. He said you were the kindest woman he had ever known." My breath caught. "You're Stephen's brother?" "Yes," he said gently. "I recognise your name on the tour list. I wasn't sure at first, but when I saw you at the airport, I knew I didn't want to overwhelm you. I waited until it felt right to tell you." I sat speechless, my heart swelling. It felt as though life had come full circle, as if Paul had somehow guided David to me when I needed it most. David reached across the table and took my hand. "I think he'd be happy you're finally doing something for yourself. You've given so much of your life to others. Now it's your turn to be loved again, Linda." Tears slid down my cheeks, but these weren't tears of sadness. They were the ones that come when your heart finally feels full. "Thank you, David," I whispered, "for everything." Later that night, back at the hotel, I finally called Mark. His voice was rushed, full of questions. "Mom, where are you? Who's that man? Are you okay?" "I'm perfectly fine, sweetheart. I'm in Austria. That man is a friend and I'm having the best Christmas I've had in years." There was a pause. Then I added gently, "You told me to stay home, so I did the next best thing." I found a home somewhere else, one filled with warmth and kindness. A long silence followed. Finally he said quietly, "I'm sorry, Mom. We should never have left you out." "I know, Mark," I replied, calm but firm. "Sometimes life teaches us through distance. You can't appreciate someone's love if you keep taking it for granted." He sighed. "Hannah feels awful. She didn't mean to hurt you." "I know she didn't, but it's not about intent. It's about remembering who we love and how we treat them." When I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't bitter or angry. I was proud that I had chosen myself, stepped out of my loneliness, and found life again. The next morning, before we left for our final stop in Switzerland, I stepped onto the hotel balcony. The snow-capped mountains glimmered in the sunlight, and I reflected on everything that had happened. The rejection, the trip, meeting David, and rediscovering peace. My daughter-in-law had told me I could stay home, and in a way, I had. But I had found a new version of home, one inside myself, and that was something no one could ever take away. That Christmas didn't just give me a story to tell, it gave me my life back. When I returned home after the trip, everything felt different. The same house that had once seemed lonely now felt warm and alive. Maybe it wasn't the house that had changed. Maybe it was me. I set my suitcase by the door, took a deep breath, and looked around at the decorations I had left behind. The tree still stood in the corner, its lights dim but steady, as if waiting for me to come home. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a forgotten guest in my own life. I felt like the host of something new: peace, independence, and quiet joy. On the kitchen table was a small stack of envelopes, Christmas cards from neighbours, friends, and even people I hadn't heard from in years. One was from Hannah and Mark. When I opened it, a small photo slipped out, my grandchildren in matching pyjamas smiling beside a Christmas tree. Inside, the message was simple: "We missed you, Mom. We're sorry. Come over soon. We want to hear everything. I smiled, my eyes stinging a little. It wasn't a grand apology, but it was a start, and that was enough. Over the next few days, I unpacked slowly, placing reminders of my trip around the house, the snow globe David had given me, the handmade angel from Salzburg, a postcard from the cafe where we had laughed until midnight. Each item carried a story, and together they turned my quiet home into something alive again. A few days later, my phone rang. It was Mark. His voice was soft, almost shy. "Mom, can we come over this weekend? The kids want to see you." "Of course," I said with a smile. "I'll make my pecan pie." That Saturday, the house filled with noise again. Children running, laughter bouncing off the walls, the smell of cinnamon and sugar in the air. Hannah helped me set the table. Though she seemed nervous, I could see the sincerity in her eyes. During dinner, she finally spoke. "Linda, I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have excluded you. I thought I was making things easier, but I see now it was selfish. You've done so much for this family, and we treated you as if you didn't matter. I'm truly sorry." I reached across the table and touched her hand. "Hannah, we all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. Family isn't about perfection, it's about forgiveness." Mark nodded. "I don't think I've ever seen you this happy, Mom. You seem different." I laughed lightly. "That's because I stopped waiting for life to happen to me. I decided to live it." After dinner, we sat by the fireplace while I showed them photos from my trip. The kids were fascinated by the castles and Christmas markets. Hannah smiled as I showed them the photo of David and me under the Christmas lights. Mark grinned. "So, who's this mystery man everyone online keeps asking about?" I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. "Just a friend," I said playfully. "A very kind friend," Hannah added. "He seems special." I looked at the picture again, at the warmth in David's eyes, and said softly, "He is." In the months that followed, David and I stayed in touch. We called often, shared photos, and planned another trip together in the spring. He was a gentle reminder that life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. But more than that, I rediscovered myself. Being left out wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. The pain of rejection had pushed me towards something far greater than comfort. It had pushed me toward freedom. The following Christmas, the entire family gathered at my home. The table was full, the lights bright, and laughter filled every corner. Hannah's mother even joined us, kind and warm. When everyone raised their glasses, Mark said to me, "Mom, for showing us that happiness isn't something you wait for, it's something you choose." As I looked around at my family, I felt a deep calm. My heart was full, not because everything was perfect, but because I had learned that love, in its truest form, doesn't fade. It just changes shape and waits for you to notice it again. Later that night, after everyone had left, I stood by the window watching snow fall softly. I reflected on how far I had come, from the woman who quietly accepted being left behind to the one who took flight without hesitation. That trip hadn't just changed my Christmas, it had changed me. I realized that sometimes life takes things away to make room for something new. Sometimes people need distance to see what you already knew, that you were enough all along. I turned off the lights, letting the glow from the Christmas tree fill the room. I whispered, "This year I didn't just celebrate Christmas, I celebrated myself." Then I picked up my phone and typed a simple post. When life tells you to stay home, go find your own adventure. You might just find yourself along the way. If you enjoyed my story, subscribe for more true stories like this, and comment below where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far kindness and courage can take you.